Doc looked at it, and of course it was fractured. And Woody said, "You need to cast this up. I'm finishing the game."
I still hadn't seen a safety come in this league, even today, that did what Darren Woodson did.
Darren Woodson was before his time. He was before his time.
I do feel like I left something that's Hall of Fame worthy.
High formation, two receivers right. 2nd and 7 at the Dallas 30. Hutchinson, handoff, Smith at left guard, 35, 40-yard line. Right on the mark. That should do it. Move over, Sweetness. Make a place for Emmett.
Do you remember the game Emmitt Smith broke Walter Payton's record?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
Seattle?
Yeah.
What if I told you that was actually the same game? Darren Woodson broke it in that game. Is that just the epitome of his career?
It is something right there. Right, yeah. Yeah, and I didn't know that. I knew he had the record. But I didn't know it was in that same game.
I had to be reminded of that today before I did this interview. I don't even remember him breaking the record.
He's not the guy that's going to make you notice him. Hey, I'm over here. He's not going to do all of that. He's just a solid dude that's going to show up and get his job done every day.
Hey, I'm glad. Have a good one, baby. Oh, yeah, you too. Always, always. Do your thing. Put that saddle on you, baby. Got to put that saddle on you. I'm sorry. Let's go make history, baby. Have a good one today, kid. Oh, yeah. You know I love you. I love you too, Ken. Congratulations. Get those two and then get the W. Let's get this W.
That wasn't, my personality wasn't to be like out front. That just wasn't my personality. Like, okay, you got time to celebrate that. Nobody, like honestly, no one cared, nor did I, that I broke a record. I wanted to win this game.
Hey, no leash!
And that should be the club record-setting tackle for Darren Woodson. Right there. 28 seconds on the clock. Ball spotted left hash at the 10-yard line. This is a 20-yarder. Snap and hold. The kick's away. 20 yards. It's good.
17-14, Seattle over Dallas.
So we lose the game, and Jerry's in there in the locker room. The Jones family's in there, and I know Emmett just broke the record, and they're talking about doing this staged event outside to honor Emmett and all this, and they want the players to stay around. And as much as I love my guy, we just lost the damn game. Love Emmett, celebrate all you want, taking my ass home. And I took some heat because I was the captain and they expected me to be on the stage and celebrate, and I just couldn't smile, man. I'm sorry. I'd have been as fake as they possibly could because, ultimately the game was not about records. The game was about winning and losing, and we lost. So I went home.
And whap from the left side, here comes Darren Woodson.
I don't know that people knew what a great competitor he was.
I still hadn't seen a safety come in this league, even today, that did what Darren Woodson did.
Darren Woodson was before his time. He was before his time.
And he kind of rewrote the rules for what a hybrid safety linebacker could be.
He has 3 Super Bowl rings. He has 5 Pro Bowls. I mean, he's in the Ring of Honor here with the Cowboys. I mean, his stats speak for themselves.
Woody was a star player who wasn't high maintenance. It was all about whatever the team needs, I do. And to me, that's what set him apart.
Throws it up for grabs, and it's intercepted by Darren Woodson. Woodson inside the 15, and Woodson goes all the way in for the score.
The competitor, the fighter. It's such an overused term, but in Woody's case, it's so true. He is passionate. You can't have a conversation with Darren Woodson about football or about business, or frankly about his family, without seeing that passion flow. And it's one of the things I love the most about it.
I can call Darren Woodson and he responds. I mean, he's a businessman, he's an entrepreneur, but he got time for his teammates, he got time for his kids, he got time for his family. And to me, that's the ultimate guy.
When I was a kid, I was a big-time dreamer. I was a project kid, man. And I can remember always looking at certain things like the needles on the ground or cans on the ground, empty beer cans and whatnot, and always thinking, I'm not gonna live like this. Maryville's the west side of Phoenix. We're 2 brothers and a sister. My mom was a single parent. Moving out to Maryville was supposed to be moving up. We're like the Jeffersons, man, we're moving up. But it was still rough.
Our neighborhood was good, but it had bad in it. It was like choices.
My mother was like my hero, definitely, hands down. She would work from her first job until from 8 or 7:30 until 4:30 or 5 o'clock, and that was at Maricopa County Superior Court, and she worked that job for 38 years. And then she'd go on to her second job, which changed a couple of times. But she'd get home about 10:30, 11 o'clock every night, and then she would sit in her chair and fall asleep. And I can't tell you how many times, man, I sat there. I can't tell you how many times I sat there and just, you know, she just sacrificed so much for us. The person I saw who put that sweat equity into her family was my mother. I knew what it felt like to work. I knew what it felt like to bust your ass and be totally committed to whatever it took. It stemmed from her, and it's the reason why I'm sitting here today.
You know, he never took anything for granted. You know, his upbringing probably had something to do with that. I mean, he never took anything for granted.
Football was just natural for me at an early age. 7, 8 years old, I was the best player. 9, 10 years, I'm the best player. So that's when it started to be more of I'm going to do something with my life, and it's going to be something associated with this sport of football. And this is what's going to be the catalyst to get me out of the financial situations that I'm in. And again, you know, as a kid, what's the first person you want to take care of? It's your mother.
I thought Darren's skill set, even though he was a linebacker, he had a defensive back skill set. He could rush like a defensive lineman. He brought so much flexibility.
USC was the one that was my dream school. As the recruiting process went along, my grades became a factor. And I didn't understand it until USC came in and said, hey, look, you know, you're a damn good player. We want you, but your grades suck.
And he's like, man, my grades, man. I'm like, so what's gonna happen? He's like, I don't know, I might have to be a walk-on.
Arizona State stepped in, they were like, no. You're gonna prop, we're gonna sit you out a year, which was unheard of, man. And this was a choice. They said, we want you to prop 48, sit out this first year. You can't come around the team. You can't come to the athletic department at all. Only thing you can do is go to school.
So what we're going to need you to do is come to Arizona State University for a year, establish yourself as a student in good standing at the university, and from that point forward, I'll promise you 4 years of scholarship. But, and this is a big but, which makes him different than a Prop 48, you have to pay your way to school this first year. And that's what people never have understood in terms of what Darren did.
All I could think about was, damn, you failed. Because I was a smarter kid than that. It was embarrassing. Felt like I was humiliated by the process. But it was a humbling process and one I would never take back.
You know, as I recall, what Darren did is that eventually this year will be over, and I'm gonna just try to grow as much as possible, pay attention,
Darren worked part-time. I believe he had a job at a tire store. And he took care of his academics, took care of his work.
That's what really motivated me, going to class. I went to school every day thinking, oh, it's not gonna be a fine line, or you're just, I'm just gonna skate by. No, I'm gonna make sure that everybody knows I'm smart enough, one, and two, I'm playing next year. That's a fact.
And Conway's pass is picked off at the 46-yard line by Darren Woodson. Arizona State with its second interception of the afternoon.
I remember them having to back me off and back me down from hitting drills. And it's because I missed that season that my tempo was different from everybody else. It was like I was hungrier than they were. They had already gone through this process, and their cadence was a certain way. Mine was, I got fresh legs. I'm ready to bang, let's go.
Darren Woodson was one of those special men, special players then, special guy, special all of that. You knew it then, and he was a great athlete that, of course I was biased at the time, but I thought he could do great things, and history showed that.
He came in when the team was on the cusp of being dynastic, 1992. Our director of college scouting was a man by the name of Dick Mansberger, and in 1992, on the day of the draft, he walked into the draft room and he had a chart set up, but he put up the measurables, or the comparables, between Darren Woodson and Deion Sanders. Deion was drafted in 1989, Darren Woodson was drafted in 1992. He said, this is a unique and special natural athlete that can do a lot of things in a football uniform. And we got to think real hard about getting him early in the second round where we can.
I was a defensive backfield coach at the time, and Jimmy brought me into the war room, and he said, tell me one more time about this Darren Woodson guy.
Well, you saw his movement. You said this guy was a linebacker in college, and he's moving better than safeties and half the corners we got. And you're like, man, this guy's going to be special.
The thing I remembered was, here's this rookie. Most rookies, their neck's skinny or they just haven't quite developed totally. Darren had those muscles that go from your shoulders up into your neck, and it seemed like he had muscles on top of muscles.
And, in my mind, I'm thinking we might hit on this guy because of his speed and his size.
It was a big draft class, but there was pressure in the sense that Jimmy Johnson created pressure. A ton of pressure.
Here we go, here we go, here we go! Right there, right there! Get in there, beast! Be under control, keep those hands up, looking at me, I can't. There we go, there's a nice tackle!
It was feast or famine, man, and they weren't holding back.
Woody was stressed. They were putting a lot of stuff on him because they wanted him to play, and they saw he had the talent. So, and back then, Dave Campbell had a different way of articulating what he wanted. A lot of cussing and fussing.
Come on, we gotta be thinking. We're not thinking real well here. Now, let's go. Oh, yeah. Come on, go get it. What the heck coverage are we in over there? If you don't know the coverage, you can't play. He said cloud, it was cover 2.
I mean, I don't know how many times Campbell was in my face about, as tiny as he was, man, he'd be right in my chest about every damn thing.
Take him that 2-1-8. All right.
Blue, 68. Hot, get it in.
Darren, excellent position. That's it.
I talked to him, I said, yo, young boy. I said, look at here, boy, you can do some things. And you know what Woody told me? Woody said, I should be starting. He said, I should be starting. And maybe I shouldn't say this, but he said, I should be starting ahead of James Washington. And I said, whoa.
And I remember Jimmy Johnson watching film and going, hey guys, I want you to watch 28. And I was freaking balling on kickoff and punt team and making tackles and all. And that's when I knew, like, dude, I can play this freaking game. I can play this game. Matter of fact, I should be the starter, of course.
Hey, super job.
You are one game away from the Super Bowl.
Live in rainy San Francisco at Candlestick Park, the NFC Championship game between the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers.
Jimmy Johnson said, just go out and play, and they know that they're 60 minutes or one football game away from going to the Super Bowl, and that is all that's on any of their minds.
Young to throw it. Quarterback draw. This was planned. Young down just outside the 35 by Darren Woodson.
That was a heck of a play by number 28, Darren Woodson.
Young stepped up. John Taylor. And John Taylor is tough to get down. Finally is by Darren Woodson.
They were just talking about Darren Woodson, number 28. He's one of the guys that makes this nickel defense so good because he's kind of a half linebacker, half safety, and he's an excellent tackler. All those guys that are out there now for the Cowboys are good tacklers.
Ball goes out of bounds with no time left on the clock. Pasadena in the Rose Bowl. The Cowboys are headed for you.
How about them Cowboys?
Now they're in the Super Bowl, and it's media day, and we're at Dodger Stadium. And all of the starters have their little podiums with the placards in the stands. Aikman, Urban, Smith, Novacek, Nate Newton. I was standing on the pitcher's mound at Dodger Stadium with Darren Woodson. And no one wants to talk to him. And he's just looking around. And he's just looking. And I said, that bothers you, doesn't it? He said, yeah. I said, you know, your day's coming.
After the season, Jimmy and I were talking, and Jimmy walked in and he said, hey, Dave, Woodson's going to be the starting safety in 1993. And I said, Jimmy, you know, he's a young guy. I don't know exactly what he's going to do. You know, he hasn't had much experience back there. He looked at me and he said, Dave, Darren Woodson's going to start at safety next year. And I looked at him and I said, you know, Jimmy, that's exactly what I was going to say.
You know, in Cowboys history, we always talk about the original Doomsday defense, but I think this defense, despite the fact that it has fewer Hall of Famers on it, the 1990s defense, I think, was better than the original Doomsday defense.
He meant everything. Woody was a leader on the defense, and everything starts with the safety because you have to get everybody lined up.
Dan Woodson came in a time where we were putting safeties in the Hall of Fame for just hitting people. Boom, 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 hitting people. And Dan Woodson would lay a hit on you. But Dan Woodson was also had the ability to take a tight end out, to play the slot receiver. That's what safeties are doing now. Wasn't what they were doing then.
He covered Jerry Rice in the slot. Think about that. Think about it. Seriously, think about it. 6'2", 228. He's covering Jerry Rice in the slot, which meant they could keep their base defense on the field. When you went 3 wide and then when you tried to run the ball, you had no luck.
He would talk about, you know, if he got his hands on people, you know, he called it the claw. You know, and he'd grab his hand and say, don't let me get the claw on him. And he's right. I mean, that's why he could play the slot guy, because the guy couldn't do anything, because he was so strong and he could move like a corner, like a safety, but he was big enough to be a linebacker, obviously.
I knew that I was one of maybe a couple of players in the entire league that had the skill set that I had. I could tackle, I could cover, I can run down on special teams. I can do a number of different things to help this team win, and I felt confident about that.
Darren, you just keep them positive. No matter what happens, you keep them positive.
But more than that, it was, you know, his heart was what made him different than anybody else.
He was excited, you know, to go home at his home stadium where he went to college, play and made plays there. It was huge for him.
A local kid in Phoenix, and here he is having the opportunity to return home to play in the biggest game of his career. Even though he'd won 2 Super Bowls, Who doesn't want to come home and play in a Super Bowl?
Because, you know, he's from Arizona, so he had like a thing that they would talk to Darren about, and it was like, what do you miss? I wish my friend Keith was here.
Every Tuesday I get a call, collect call from, you know, Florence Correctional Center, Keith Tucker on it. And then the name, he would say Keith Tucker, and then boom, I'd accept.
Every Tuesday, clockwork. Every Tuesday, that was their off day. So, you know, Monday, they got to come watch film. I know the whole, like, I'm a part of the Cowboys because I knew his schedule.
Both project kids come up together. His family moved out to Maryville years before mine did. Best friend, like through and through. If you saw Keith, you saw me, and vice versa.
Before we went to high school, drugs started coming into our neighborhoods.
He got introduced to the drug game, and I would probably say maybe our freshman year in high school, he started to tinker a little bit with making fast money.
Darren stayed on that football. That was his main thing, and that's what I made sure, not as a parent, as nothing like that, but when I was doing wrong, he could not come around me at all.
I can tell you there's a couple of times I showed up at a party with a couple of my other buddies that Keith was at, and he told me to leave, which was the right thing for me to do. One almost got in trouble because I didn't leave soon enough.
I'm like, homie, it's time for you to go because something's about to go down. And sure enough, he wasn't gone 5 minutes later, something went down.
I had to go visit my Uncle Sammy in prison in Florence a number of times with my mom. And we would go visit him, and they would close that door, that iron door behind us, and it was the nastiest sound you could ever imagine. And I always thought, I will never, ever experience that. That's not gonna be a part of my life.
I wasn't on the right path. Great parents, my mother and father worked hard all their lives, but I chose to do wrong. I didn't have to. I chose, and I made a lot of bad choices at that time, and I paid for them.
He gets caught and he never watches me play a live game. Watch me on TV play for his Dallas Cowboys.
I'm sorry. I'm so proud of that guy. Because he never gave up on me. And people wanted him to give up on me because I was the bad guy.
It's crazy, we just feel like we never missed a beat. And in the off season, I'd always go visit him. So to the point where I had a lot of people telling me not to take my son with me, but it was his Uncle Keith. Like, this is my family. And I wanted to show Keith, you know, my little dude. So he needed to see him.
To this day, I'm walking through here and people said, I heard a lot about you. He didn't ever have to mention me. I've been in prison. I went to prison for 23 years, you know, so he didn't have to walk around with my picture in his wallet, my picture in his locker. He didn't have to come to the prison to see me. But he did. And that means the world to me.
He has absolutely turned his life around in a way that once he got out, before he even got out, he and I talked, and he said, I'm getting out and I'm never coming back.
This is on all year long. Today, this is what we played for all year long. Today's the day we peak.
In those championship years in 92, 93, 95, we're calling each other at night talking about plays that we're watching from home after the team ran us out at 8 o'clock at night. Like, that's, you think about, you live, breathe, eat football.
So that 2000 season, bad Cowboys team getting blown out in Baltimore, why go back in the game with a broken arm?
Why not do it? Didn't know it was broke, just felt like it was like a stinger or something, and lost the little feeling in my hand.
Well, it's been 9 years since the Cowboys have been shut out, and we've still got 11 minutes left in the second quarter. But I'm telling you what, this is not looking good. It's 10-0 Baltimore. Second down at the 50, and they draw it to Lewis, who steps around Joe Bowden and blasts into the secondary. Down to the Dallas 38.5.
Brad, Darren Woodson missed a tackle, and now Woodson's down on the field being attended to by the Cowboys trainers.
Baltimore Stadium had just been built, I think, that year. We go back to X-ray, and the guy can't get the X-ray unit to work. Brand new place.
Britt was a little animated and upset that the X-ray machine was down.
The guy goes, well, you know, there's a hospital. The hospital's not too far away. I said, how far? He said, 2 minutes. I said, get me the ambulance right now.
I can remember the emergency room doors opening, and it was just tile, like slippery, as you can imagine, the emergency room of a hospital. And I'm walking in there with cleats. I'm slipping and sliding all over the place. Britt's holding me up in this process. He's yelling at the nurses because they need to find an X-ray room.
I looked at the ER doctor and I said, listen, I don't have any paperwork, I don't have anything. I need an X-ray form. I need you to hand me the X-ray, and I'm walking him out of here and going back to the stadium, and you can just send us the bill.
There are people that are standing there looking at me walk in my full garb uniform.
I told the ambulance driver, take him back to the ambulance. I waited on the X-ray, grabbed it right out of the processor, and we went back to the stadium.
And Britt Brown was at his best. Yelling, screaming at people, giving orders. They were asking for my insurance, and he's like, what? We're playing a football game.
Doc looked at it, and of course it was fractured. And Woody said, you need to cast this up, I'm finishing the game.
I asked the doctor, I said, hey, you know, can I hurt it anymore? And he was like, no, it's broken straight through. You know, it is as bad. And I said, well, then I can play. And he's like, no, you can't play him. I looked at Britt and I said, Britt and Jim Mauer, both of them. And Jim was like, I don't know. And I looked at Britt and Britt was like, you're not gonna hurt it anymore. I said, well, let's strap him up.
And so we did. Put a full arm cast on him from here down to his wrist.
He came out, they couldn't find his helmet. They finally found it there in the trunk. It had been put away. But watch him when he tries to put it on. You can see that he can't use that right arm at all.
This is Lewis around the corner. Woodson made the stop.
But watch Darren Woodson when he's playing with one arm, and that one arm is his left arm. But I'll tell you, he's a warrior. I mean, that's another word we throw around too much. But if we talk about the definition, I would put Darren Woodson in that category. I would take him.
I mean, he finished the game, which, you know, I mean, I don't know what else you could say about somebody. I mean, he goes out and does that.
I guess I didn't look at it as it was anything abnormal. That was normal. And again, like I saw so many guys. I've seen Troy Aikman before a game. Couldn't walk. Could not walk because of his back. And he found a way to get a shot, stretch out, and bam, you walk out there and Troy's playing.
He really didn't become a team spokesperson or somebody who was kind of the voice of the team until later on in his career, after some of those pieces of the major pieces of the dynasty started to slip away or retire or move on to other teams. And that's when his leadership role kind of blossomed both on the field and with the media.
It's my job because I knew how Ken Norton led. I knew how Tony Tolbert led. I knew how the James Washingtons and how he prepared. I knew what it felt like to be a championship. I knew who Daryl Johnson was and how much time he put into the game. So that's where I came from. So all these young guys that were coming in those years, in the 2000s and the 2001s, they couldn't understand, they couldn't relate. So I had to show them what it was to be a champion.
Woody was, I mean, I was like my big bro, you know, being a 20-year-old, you know, wet behind the ears coming from OU, and to be able to be mentored and embraced lovingly by a 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time Super Bowl champion. I mean, that means a lot to a younger player.
Darren only cared about one thing, it was winning. And, you know, even if he was going to take his spot, which he would not have done, that was the way he approached the game and how important it was to win games.
He was someone who, he relished that big brother role. Not to mention, I think he also understood that if he could get all the young guys to kind of buy into some of the things that the coaches were saying, then it helps everybody. Everybody could be successful. We could try to make it to a Super Bowl.
Well, that's tough to say this. Do I dare say former Cowboy?
No.
No, I'm not going with foreign. Okay, retired Cowboy, Darren Woodson. You don't feel like a former Cowboy yet, do you?
No, I don't. I'll be here tomorrow morning still doing my rehab, so I'll still be a part of this. And if I miss my rehab tomorrow, they'll probably still find me. So.
Yeah, it's really kind of difficult to actually talk about it, to be honest with you.
Going into that season's 04 season, I had L4, L5 back surgery, and it was my second L4, L5 discectomy. And at this time around, the nerve had really taken a hit, and I ended up having the surgery. I had drop foot, had a lot of pain in my leg, lost a ton of weight.
I remember he got hurt and he was laying in the bed, and his wife at the time had to take him the phone. He was laying in the bed. I'm like, what's up, man? He said, man, they got me. What you mean they got you? He said, I'm hurt, man. I'm like, okay, that happens. I'm not supposed to be hurt. That's what he said. He said, I'm not supposed to be hurt.
I begged Parcells on the phone to allow me to just be there at camp. Just hang around. And he's like, no, I can't do it. So I called Parcells and I said, hey, look, this is my second time calling you. Either you're gonna fly me out there or I'm gonna fly myself out there. And he's like, all right, we'll get you a ticket tomorrow. You just show your ass up. That's what he said. I just needed to be there, just to be around the game, just to smell the field. That was just a part of it, man, for me. I just could not be home while training camp was going on. This time around, the nerve damage, I was getting healthier, but the nerve wouldn't regenerate.
We just weren't sure it was going to ever come back, and so we spent a ton of time just dealing with it and trying to get him strong enough to get past it.
And he's telling me, look, man, that nerve, it's not you, brother, it's the nerve. The nerve needs to regenerate. It's not, you don't have a timeline. I'm like, no, I'll be ready.
And one day, I just told him, I said, I can't put you back out there and have you get used and have you get exposed. And after your career, you've played all these years and you've given it everything you had. And I just, with him, the thing was that there was never a day that he wasn't given every ounce of everything. Practice, games, in his relationship with everybody else.
I just couldn't get there. I couldn't will myself. Through all the injuries, all the 10 other injuries that I've had in my career, I could will myself to get there. This one was outside me. I was disappointed in the situation, knew I was gonna go on IR, knew it wasn't gonna happen. I went home and I was playing with my son, DJ, and we were playing catch out in the front yard. And he threw a ball over my head. And I tried to reach up and I fell down. And I thought, no, I'm done. Period.
I retired because it was time. It was time to retire. I'll heal in the next 4 or 5 months, but will I still be the same Darren Woodson? Do I want to go through that whole process of rehabbing and getting back on the field? And I don't want to do that. It's time for me to mentally move on and physically move on and spend some time with my kids.
That hurt. And I love my other teammates, but when you have such an iconic player as Darren, you don't ever want. I was clingy. I was that clingy person. I always wanted to be around him, and then once that cord gets cut, it's kind of like taking it back, and now you have to try to step in and be that iconic figure that no one can fill his shoes.
He was the only player that played for Jimmy Johnson and Bill Parcells.
You didn't forget what it's like, did you?
Hey, this is back. This is what we need to be, right here.
He was the last player in this organization from the 90s dynasty to retire. And when he did so, he was the all-time leading tackler in Dallas Cowboys history. Give that some thought.
Well, I mean, he's the last guy, which I didn't realize that had been a part of all three. So, you know, the bridge has definitely now been broken, and that's why you saw the people who were here today, because you know, he's the last part of that legacy.
Darren never seemed to be a guy that always looked for credit. He's a guy that came out, like he said, he worked hard every day, and that was credit enough for him. As long as he knows deep down within himself that he worked hard and did his job, then the credit was going to come, not just for himself, but for everybody.
When he stood in front of you and he said that when he put that helmet on, that he played with his heart, he did. He set a standard for all of us, all of us.
Me signing my locker meant so much, because for years I have been trying to tell the guys that were coming up, we start to lose the historical value on what it took to get there. Because I wanted everyone to see those Super Bowls and the history of those, and those same guys that were in that locker room at the time, they knew what it took to get there.
Blitz, Graham, fumble, Darren Woodson on the blitz. Hit Graham and forced the fumble.
Rams pick up another blitz. Intercepted by Woodson. 22nd career interception.
I felt like I was a Hall of Fame player when my career was over with. I felt like I had done enough. But it didn't bother me as much as I've aged and gotten older. It chaps my ass. It really does, because I felt like I played with guys that are Hall of Famers, and I played at the same level, if not even better.
I do think one thing that's forgotten about those teams, everybody talks about the triplets, right? And they were great. There's no doubt about that. They're all three in the Hall of Fame for a reason: Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, and Michael Irvin. But people forget how good that defense was. I think the defense was actually better than the offense. When you look at their rankings, they certainly were.
You know, the two arguably most recognizable is probably Charles and Dion. But I would say Darren Woodson undoubtedly had more of an impact, if not more.
I just feel so bad that we hyped the offense so much till we had a top 5 defense during his era several times. I think one time we was ranked number 1, and Darren Woodson was in the thick of this thing, calling and setting our defensive backfield. He would tell guys, watch this route combination. Watch. He was so intelligent, man. And now we putting lesser guys in the Hall of Fame over Woody. Wow, that's a tragedy.
But since 2017, the past 5 classes, we've put a ton of safeties in there. Kenny Easley, Brian Dawkins, Bobby Dillon, Cliff Harris, Ed Reed, Troy Polamalu, John Lynch, and Steve Atwater. So we've really started to give safeties their due again and go back and say, you know, these guys are really important to their teams and to their defenses.
You know, I don't think they've asked Polamalu to carry Jerry Rice. I don't think they asked Ed Reed to cover Randy Moss. I don't think they've done that. But we asked Woody to do it, and he got it done.
I think it's up to us as Dallas voters probably to push him a little bit more, to say, hey, you know, we need to try to get this guy at least in the room to be discussed. Let us tell his story, and then you guys decide whether he's a Hall of Famer or not at that point. But I would like his story told and his case made in that room for him to have a chance to go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, because I think when people hear just how good he was for those teams, and we can get a lot of people to back it up.
He deserves it because you add character, you add his leadership, what he meant to a football team that won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, and you know what he did with other players on the team, and then his overall football ability. He's deserving of that.
You know, I think more so now than ever, because the game has changed so much, where we're asking the safeties to do so much. And now when we start looking back over safety responsibilities, our eyes should come to the work that Darren Woodson has done, because he was before his time. So when you're measuring these guys right now, the Buda Bagers, all these guys that can play the game right now, when you look back, you say, man, Darren Woodson was doing this back then.
Mike said to me, first of all, you are a Hall of Famer. Second of all, stop being passive. because that's not you. And I thought, there's some truth in that. There's no gimmies in life, trust me on that. There are no gimmies, and there's nothing that I feel like I deserve, but I do feel like I left something that's Hall of Fame worthy. When I was at ESPN as an analyst, I was also an investor in commercial real estate here locally. And I got to give a lot of credit to Roger Staubach for being a person, for being a mentor, not just to me, but to so many other guys that came to that locker room as far as giving us an understanding of life after football. I needed a new challenge. Commercial real estate, was that for me. So I joined as a partner with a firm called ESRP. And we do commercial real estate. So we help clients find office space, industrial space, contact centers. Imagine us being a realtor helping you find a home. But instead of a home realtor, we are for office and industrial space.
He channeled his competitive nature on the football field to his competitive nature in business, and that's why he's thriving now.
So I started the podcast along with Tyler Klutz, who's a former player, a guy named Ben Gibbs. We got together and we wanted to talk about life after football and the transitions and how hard those transitions are. And our podcast is based around mental health, physical health, empowering individuals, being encouraging, just trying to be the best that you can possibly be, whether it be a football player, an athlete, a CEO, a doctor, anyone that has a great story, has a great journey. That's who we're trying to interview, because we totally understand that at some point they hit a roadblock. They got knocked on their ass. How'd they recover? How did they get up? Those are the stories we want to tell.
See, hope's a desire and an expectation for a result. And for me, I started to understand that hope is not tangible. It's a belief. And that belief stems inside of you. And you have to personally light that fire of hope every single day.
He's not a guy that always wanted attention, and you don't need to help people or bless people, and everyone doesn't have to know it. But I think he probably realized that the medium that he's in now, you can reach more people.
Game was over. It's all we knew. That's all I've known since I was 7 years old. I was depressed for a long time, tried to bounce back, and it's the same story that we continuously hear. And I wanted to be an outlet for those former players to let them know, look, life's just beginning.
Now, I think it's pretty special when you get an athlete as good as he was, but he really was just as good a man off the football field, and you knew he would end up doing the things in society, making the world better that he's doing right now.
Like if you got stranded on the side of a highway, Darren would be the guy that could, come pick you up.
I remember calling him one time, and he said, "I can't talk right now." He was on his way to one of his kids' games. He said, "No, you don't understand. When I was growing up, my dad told me he was coming to 1,000 things. He never showed up. Or he might show up once every now and then. But he told me he was coming all the time, and he never came. And I swore when I had kids, if I told him I was coming, then I'm coming. I don't care what happens, I'm coming."
He's a loyal person. He's my brother. I love him. If you want to model your kids after someone, that's who you model them after. Because he had to go through Prop 48, be a walk-on at ASU, work hard at ASU, to be a star of the stars in the Dallas Cowboys organization. You can't write that. You can't write that, but he wrote it.